Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of Intro to Special Education. This week, we're going to be learning a little bit more about the documents that are required to be developed as a part of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So, we're going to be looking at something called an IFSP, an Individual Family Service Plan, which is for very young children aged birth up until age 3, and individual education programs. Now, notice I said programs, not plans. IEP does stand for Individual Education Program, which is for students age 3 until actually for some students up to age 22. We're also going to be thinking a little bit about family engagement and the planning process for special education. And I saw in our discussion from week 1, we have some people who are working in special education right now and some people that are actively involved in the referral process. So that's going to be really interesting to take what you're experiencing and the knowledge that you're gaining from your learning and see what the overlay is and see if it brings up any other questions. And we'll look forward to you being able to share some of that with us in our discussions as we move on. This week for your learning materials, you do have some read, watch, and explore. You'll see the tabs under the readings and multimedia. You're going to learn a little bit more again about the IFSP. You're going to learn about IDEA and some additional information about accommodations and modifications, which did come up in our discussion as well in week 1. And that can sometimes be a struggle to tell what's an accommodation and what's a modification. So I'm just going to give you my little trick that I use in my mind, the test I have for accommodations and modifications. Accommodations change how something is being taught or how we demonstrate our learning. A modification changes the what we are being taught or the what we're required to present as our learning. So think about it as the how and the what. There are some things that do occasionally fall in a gray area, but the how and the what will usually get you to accommodation or modification. We're also going to be talking about universal design and universal instruction, and that's really how you can take an accommodation that may benefit everybody in the classroom. And I do give you some of those examples. I'm going to ask you to watch some videos about what is an IEP, an individual education program, also some videos about accommodations and modifications, and a really great TED Talk about designing for disability and how we can all benefit, that whole idea of universal design for learning. And then I have a couple of exploration websites for you. Every state is required to have a parent training and information center. So I gave you a link so you can find your PTI, your Parent Training and Information Center. This is something that is funded by a national grant. Every state has one, some have 2 in the larger states. And it's where families can go to be supported by other families who've received a lot of specialized training to help them with policies and procedures and what's going on in special ed, and to help give them information so they can make good decisions and advocate for their child. And also from understood.org, some more information about accommodations and modifications. For our discussion this week, I'm going to ask you to watch a short video. It's an old video. I do have to say that. It's called Welcome to Holland. But I still, every time I watch it, I think it's one of those videos that is sort of timeless in the content that it has. I want you to answer the following questions after you watch this video, which I hope you find as, I don't know, always makes me feel very introspective after I watch this video, and by now I've watched it hundreds of times. But sort of your overall reaction, what did you think about the Welcome to Holland video? If you really think it's old and dated, feel free to say that. No hard feelings. And I'd actually like to know that if you feel that way. Was there anything that surprised you? Any personal experiences or other connections you can make from this week's readings that relate to the Welcome to Holland video? And then think about how you can support parents with children that have children with special needs to make sure that there are positive educational outcomes for their child. So how can you support a parent so they can and support their child? Thinking that parents are a really important part of that ingredient, that they need to be part of that planning and support for each child. And then lastly, our assignment is I'm going to have you look at a list of some accommodations and modifications and think of some accommodations and modifications you may be able to come up with. Maybe it's something, if you had an IEP or a 504 plan, something you had as an accommodation or modification, something that you're seeing implemented in the school that you're at. So you can be creative and think about that. And then you can either write a paper, 2 or 3 pages, or a brief 5-minute presentation. Remember, if you do a presentation, it needs to have a narration. I want you to define accommodations and modifications using the information you gathered from this week's learning. I want you to explain how some accommodations or modifications can be made using those principles of universal design that I mentioned. And then choose at least one accommodation or modification as an example and talk about how that can benefit children with or without disabilities. And the example I give everyone is if there's a ramp for everybody to go into school, the children with wheelchairs can go in, children with walkers can go in, and so can the typically abled children. So that ramp, while it's an accommodation for some people, it's universally designed so everybody can access the school. Make sure that you always look at the rubric before you finish completing your assignment. I would even suggest that you self-score the rubric, and that way you'll know that you're not missing any important points. In this case, I think something that does get missed in assignments are including references and citations using APA format. So also remember, for every reference that you list, either on a separate piece of paper if it's a presentation or as your last page for a paper, you should have at least one in-text citation for each one. That lets me know what information you've gotten from each one. Anyhow, I'm looking forward to our discussion this week. I'm looking forward to seeing your papers. And if you need to get a hold of me, please send me a message through Canvas or send me an email at my BayPath email address, and I will get back to you as soon as I can, usually within a couple hours. Take care. Have a great week.